harder to do. And sometimes I can't even skate because it's so crowded. And some kind of things that would be really nice for improvements would be like a bowl or a ledge, mainly more space and more obstacles and stuff like that. So, yeah,
Okay.
that's pretty much all.
Any questions?
Really appreciate you
Yes.
stating that. Thank you very much.
We rarely have 11-year-olds who come up here and speak. We really appreciate that you took the time and you have the courage to come up here. You did a great job. Okay, our next speaker is Todd Craybill.
Hi, Todd Craybill, 31 Arbor Circle, Stillwater. I've been building houses off and on here in Stillwater since the mid-'80s, and I'm just going to speak to the proposed permit fee changes. The current cost to permit a 3,000 square foot house inside of Stillwater is $2,195. Under the proposed increase, that 3,000 square foot house would be $4,810. That's an increase of $2,615. Similarly, a 2,300 square foot house would have an increase of, would go from $2,074 to $4,082. It's nearly doubling the cost of a permit. This is my hometown. I love building here. I want to see it continue to grow and grow responsibly. But at some point, as a builder, as a developer, we start looking at other opportunities perhaps outside the city limits, and I really don't want to see that. So I'd like to see some thought given to these increases. I feel like some increases are necessary, but I think these are a little excessive and maybe disproportionate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Craybill.
Can I ask a question real quick, Mr. Craybill?
Absolutely.
Yeah, can I just ask generally, the cost of study service that you're looking at and referring to talks about trying to recover more of the actual cost of the development services department, currently recovering about 20-some% of the actual cost it takes to run that department, and the increases here are designed to get the recovery of those costs up some. Do you have a general idea or objection at all to the idea of trying to get the city to recover more of the cost of that it takes to run that department?
No, I think, again, as I stated, some increases would be necessary. I feel like, that's what needs to happen, but this amount is what I'm having a little objection.
Do you have a sense of, in terms of how much of the cost of the department we should be able to recover?
I don't know that I have an amount. I think that's something that perhaps ought to go before the BRC, the Builder Review Committee, and involve them and get their input. I don't know that I'm at liberty to speak to that tonight necessarily without more research and input.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, our next speaker is Dan Siebert.
My name is Dan Siebert. I live at 4110 North Fairgrounds Road. I'm here to speak about that. We have people speaking on individual that will address some of your concerns, that will show what other cities are paying, will indicate what we can hire these services for, so what the market really is paying for those services, tax generation that comes out of building the house that shows those costs are already actually being covered by the cost of building the house, and there's going to be some people address that. My major concern tonight is that for the last 15 years there's been a system in this town where anything that affects the development and building community is brought to the Builders Relations Committee. We hash it over. We don't always agree. We've had an awful lot of good conversations. We've kept construction moving when I believe it would have shut down in the last few years completely. And all of that has been done in an effort of cooperation. It feels, and there is some tangible evidence, that something has happened to change that. I don't think it has anything to do with staff. Paul has always been great to work with. John was always very open and honest. City manager's always very honest with us in those meetings, and we have good conversation. And the reason that some of these people, some of you may not know why that committee was developed. It's not an effort to control the things that the people of Stillwater do from the development community. It's an effort to keep everybody out of these commission meetings. Because 15 years ago, it was a disaster. Every time something came up, there was a rush, there was a lot of people, everybody was speaking, and it was just a mess, and it was really ugly. The last time we had a concern, one of the commissioners made the comment that he wished we would be more involved and show up at the meeting more often, which was proof at how well the system works. We would like to find out if something has interrupted that, what that is, get back to an effort of cooperation. This information, our meeting was last Wednesday. Interestingly enough, the information wasn't available till Thursday morning. They had the information, they'd run these numbers that Todd just gave you, but were not able, because the information hadn't been released, to discuss it in that meeting, and then it was supposed to be up for a vote tonight. And that's not an effort of cooperation, that's not working together, and that's not getting the best answer for the citizens of Stillwater. We're not trying to control the process, we're trying to vet everything before it hits here so everybody can be behind it when it gets there. So there's going to be some more people break down all of these different numbers for you so you can see the real ramifications of what we're talking about. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Trey McCune.
Trey McCune, 4620 West 6th Avenue. Just to build a little bit on what Todd and Dan both said, when we talk about increases in cost and increases in building and things like that, it does hit home to all of us. It is our livelihood, it is our job. It's really easy a lot of times to compare community by community by community. And we think what works for Edmond, what works for Ada, what works for Shawnee. Let's find some commonality of what works for Stillwater. It's not always apples to apples. Right, currently, we're hitting about probably the 14th on the list of what the building permit would cost. We estimate with these increases, we'd be closer to 3rd or 4th. It's a pretty big increase. And what we're looking at is we want to justify, okay, what works for Edmond, what works for Norman, what works for Oklahoma City, and see what works for Stillwater. So what we're asking for is just to table this motion. Let's get us a little bit more time. Let's go through BRC. Let's talk some things out and see what works for Stillwater. We're not totally against increases, but we want to justify our increases and see where they come from. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ken Alexander.
Hope I can do as good as Brock did. Anyway, this is Ken Alexander, 1109 Greystone. I am owner of Alexander Construction Company. Again, I've been building in Stillwater for 30 years. Recently, I want to talk to you about the proposed plan review fee. And we've recently built a commercial medical office building on West 6 with an evaluation of $1.5 million. The plan review fee was $300.65. The commercial building permit was $519, for a total of $819.65. The new proposed fee for $1.5 million will be $6,572.52, and the commercial permit fee will be $1,072, for a total of $7,645. The net difference would be $6,825 difference. Again, some things that does not include is the water meters, the water meter tie-on fee, which again is not included, and a commercial transportation fee, which is another $2,000, or a total of $8,023. So you're looking at a $15,000 fee for a $1.5 million commercial project. Please consider that some of these buildings pay and generate sales tax and pay property tax. These increases will impact commercial property and the way developers think and the decisions they make in investing in Stillwater. Again, none of these items were discussed at DREC, and I think we need to do that. So again, thank you very much. Yes,
Ask
sir.
a quick question?
Yes, you can.
So that increase you talked about to, of over $6,000 on that building,
Yes.
under this scheme, that's designed to recover about 75% of the cost that it takes to provide those services. So currently, if you're paying $819 for a permit on a $1.5 million building, the rest of the city is paying that $7,000 cost. So is it,
I
am
agree in some
mistaken by
cases,
saying that it-
commercial stuff, I think, is a little different. Again, some of these things generate sales tax.
Okay, but a commercial
know.
medical office building probably doesn't.
Probably doesn't, but most of my buildings do, most of the commercial buildings do.
So I guess that's just my general question, maybe for all you guys when you come to speak about
Mm-hmm.
this, is currently the city and the taxpayers in the city are subsidizing these fees
Right.
for a building like that to the amount of $7,000 per building. And so, for me, it's a question of where should that balance be, right? Should
Right.
taxpayers in the city be subsidizing all of that money, or should that come from the developer and the builder who's, or from the owner of that?
Again, a private person is going to be able to, again, pay sales tax on materials that are purchased. Other entities, city doesn't,
Sure.
hospital doesn't, and there's a lot of things that don't pay sales tax. So we're one of them. So, again, we agree that, the numbers are too low.
Okay.
So, we're here to understand that, but not to this extent.
I can understand that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Dale Sorrell.
Hello. I'm Dale Sorrell, 1521 East 6th. Just wanted to speak with you regarding the cost of services study. It feels like at times we're raising fees and cutting services, and being in business here, that's a challenge at times. But I think most of us are in agreement there needs to be some fee increases. It's probably been a while, but to the extent that we're looking at here seems a little strong. Increasing the fees for the permitting and inspection on new construction will affect the cost of the house, but with the building trades, the electricians, plumbers, heat and air, there's a lot of work that's being done on the service side that is not being permitted. I've talked to some of these guys, they say, we're not going to get a permit. That's a waste of time and effort, and we'd rather pay the penalty if we get caught. That's kind of frustrating when we're trying to follow the rules and buy the permit, and at times, the inspector never even shows up when we change a water heater or a furnace. If it's a gas line or sewer line, they come look at that. But on the service side of the business, we can't keep our guy there indefinitely waiting on an inspector to show up. So that's frustrating, but with the change in the ability to charge the permits where we used to fax them in and pay the bill at the end of the month, I think that stopping that probably drove some of the people to quit applying for the permits. With the rate that I see the cost is going up for those permits, for water heater, furnace, air conditioner, condenser, sewer line, water line, I think that would probably drive more people away from trying to follow the rules, which gets to be a challenge. We don't feel like we're on a level playing field when other guys aren't following the rules. I don't think there's really much of a way to enforce some of that. But I believe if you did a study on how many permits were applied for or issued for furnace or water heater replacement, you'll see that there's not very many companies in town that are applying for those and following the rules. So I think it is a good idea to table this, and I honestly believe it's best to respect the committees that have been formed and go through those on lots of subjects, and this one in particular, the Building Review Committee, which really had no input or any indication of what was going on, and they just felt like it was dictated to them what's going to happen. Any questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Roger Gose.
Roger Gose, 1120 East Connell. I'd like to talk about the proposed plan and inspection fees, but first, please know that I am in support of Ordinance 3366, authorizing cost recovery for development service functions. I support reasonable adjustments to fees to appropriately and proportionately recover the cost of services rendered by the Development Services Department. Will, to the question you asked a while ago, the department might not be structured right for the workload. I've reviewed the proposed fee schedules received at 8 o'clock on Thursday and have many concerns and ask that, hear my concerns, but hopefully we have time to work these out before they're adopted. The proposed fees for inspection of public infrastructure improvements seem excessive. For instance, the fee for plan review, inspection, and testing is proposed to be $225. Means every time an inspector goes out there, it's $225. Takes him 15 minutes. That's a pretty good job to have, or it'll help the city's coffers. This covers sewer, water, and street improvements. The field activity is typically 30 minutes of a field tech checking pipe alignment, depth, bedding, paving subgrade, or pavement placement. This fee is excessive and, in my estimation, above the cost of the services. Table labeled plan review. I've been told it is also for inspections. Currently, the city does not have a specific charge for inspections. I'm talking construction, residential, and I assume this is for commercial also. It's very unclear. The fee has always been for a building permit. It's been included, which seems to include plan review, building permit, and inspections. The building permit appears to be covered under new residential 1 and 2 family and is based upon a square footage and has a minimum of $102. This would be reasonable for issuing a building permit and a CO, in my opinion. Plan review inspections are covered on a separate spreadsheet and are based upon cost, not square footage. I do not believe that a cost basis accurately reflects the effort to review the plan or perform the inspections. Fees above the cost of service become a tax. Square footage is a better basis for the effort required. Finished costs can vary as much as $30 to $35 per square foot, depending upon the finish out. The effort to inspect a 2,000 or 4,000 square foot home is more proportional to the time involved. It is difficult to do a comparison from the table, but if you consider a 5,000 square foot house to cost $150 per square foot, then the plan review and inspection would cost $4,263 based upon the proposed table. I'd ask for 5, okay. If the city contracted with a private company that provides plan review and inspection services, the cost has been quoted as $1,000 to $1,200 per house under 5,000 square feet. Their basis is buildings under 8,000 square feet typically require 14 to 16 inspections and involve 6 to 9 site visits. This method would still require a building permit to be issued by the city and a CO issued by the city upon certification of completion of the house. A building official would still be required. A recently permitted $315,000 house under the proposed plan would require plan review and inspection fee of $2,126 compared to a contracted service fee of $1,000 to $1,200. Current pending legislation would allow the city to contract for private inspection services to state licensed inspectors. Hopefully this legislation will be on the governor's desk within the next 2 weeks. I respectfully ask for the adoption of a fee schedule to be delayed until the citizens involved in providing housing and commercial structures for this community are allowed to work with staff and to get the concerns worked out. The construction industry has had a good relationship with staff working through BRC for over 15 years, and when this happens, the final product seems to work for all involved. Thank you for your time, and no, I am not interested in going into the private inspection business. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gose. Our next speaker is Ron Walker. And our last speaker.
Ron Walker, 2218 Walking Trail Drive. Some of you may know me, some may not. I've been involved in design, development, and construction of residential single-family homes for 35 years. So I'm going to speak to something that I know the council has talked a lot about in the last few months, and that's sales tax. One thing that Mr. Craybill didn't mention about the 3,000 square foot house is that house will pay $4,500 in sales tax to the city. That's 3.5%, I believe is the city's take. Roughly a house is 0.5% labor, and that's where my math's coming from. You could argue that, but so we are paying our way. When you add that to the permits that we are currently paying, the $1.5 million commercial building that Mr. Alexander talked about, it'd be in a medical office. It may not bring in sales tax in the future, but using that same calculation, it paid $21,000 in sales tax. Now, I know you'd like to use that money elsewhere, but if you're using the philosophy that the beneficiary of the permit should pay for it, you can't ignore that we are paying that sales tax. I think you just have to look at that. And if that house is built 2 miles south of town, you don't get any of that, $4,500. Not to mention the electric revenues. That's roughly half of our revenue, I believe, is electric. If that I don't know how that's going to affect commercial because they can't just pick up and build wherever they choose, but residential pretty much can now. If there's water, if there's electricity, those are available beyond Stillwater. Sewer used to be the big thing that kept things close to town because you had to build a lagoon, you had to build a septic system. It took a certain amount of acreage. Now you have aerobic septic systems where you can build on as small as a half-acre lot. So if you drive down Western, Country Club, Sanger Road, you'll see this is happening. You go up Highway 177 near the Turnpike, that's outside the city limits. Go down McMurtry Road. My concern is we are going to encourage that and lose that sales tax revenue, lose that electrical revenue. I'm not saying things are good at the status quo. There should be some increases. But I think we're just missing the point if we don't acknowledge that sales tax that's paid during construction, not to mention if it brings another person to town who's buying groceries and gas. May I continue? Granted, if someone builds 2 miles outside of town, they're probably still going to buy groceries and gas in Stillwater. But they're probably not going to buy, well, they're not going to buy their electricity through Stillwater. You even pay sales tax on electricity, I understand. I also have heard a lot of talk about where our sales tax is going down because of internet purchases. You don't buy a house on the internet yet. You could possibly buy some materials, but that housing is going to be a steady source of sales tax, and it's right before you. You can see what's going on. If someone was buying all the materials outside of town, not paying tax, or one of these huge apartment buildings, I think your time to be better spent looking at, are they paying the sales tax? Where's that material coming from? If there's a hailstorm, all these roofers, out-of-town roofers come to town, where's that material coming from? Are we getting the sales tax? So I know I've gone over my time. Any questions for me? All right, thank you.
All right, now, thank you. Okay, that was all of our speakers. We really do appreciate that you came and let us hear your opinions tonight. Very much appreciated. Okay, that takes us to item 7, which is public hearings. Item A has been postponed. as
Need a motion to reset that
to May 15th. So do we have a motion to move item A to May 15th?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second to move item A from May 1st to May 15th. Please vote. And with a vote of 5-0, item A has been moved to May 15th. And that takes us to general orders. Mr. McNichol.
The first item tonight is a report from the Stillwater Chamber of Commerce and their CEO, Justin Mingus.
Evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Thank you for making a few happy folks behind us there. I've got a few updates today. I'm going to follow a similar format as the last update, give you a little bit of update on the RFP activity, as well as discuss some of the key initiatives that we talked about the last time, as well as add one on the list there, and then answer any questions you might have. So to get into the RFP activity for the quarter, we had 16 requests for proposals come from our partners at the Oklahoma Department of Commerce, the Tulsa Chamber, and the Oklahoma City Chamber. Of those 16, we were able to submit responses to 8, so we were batting about 50% on the sites available, logistics. Some of them just needed to be on an on-ramp to a highway. Some of them wanted certain workforce measures that we just weren't going to hit. And so I don't see that as a negative. It's just we are what we are, right? We're not on I-40 and 35. We're off a little bit. We still have 9 active prospects, so that's increased a little bit since the last update. Kind of the bright shining star, if you will, between now and the last time we met is we actually were able to go to Oklahoma City and present. So one of those active prospects is an RFP that we submitted. They liked us enough to give us a ticket to the dance, if you will, and we were able to showcase the city staff. A couple folks are here this evening that helped out. I can't thank them enough. Paula Dennison and her crew over there putting together the package that we need. There's no way that I would have gotten it in a quick enough time. I don't know how many gallons of water we can produce, electric rates, and that sort of thing. So thank you to the city staff. It went well, but as I discussed in the last one, ED pipeline is generally quiet for a little bit. I got an update from our partners this evening, and we haven't been eliminated. They just haven't called us to come do a formal site visit in town. But we do have a site visit coming up in a few weeks from a totally different project that we submitted back in December. So we're really excited to showcase the community. They're going to be looking at an existing building north of town. And I can answer questions, offline about that if you like. Some updates on the key initiatives. So our BRE, Business Retention and Expansion Initiative, which is us reaching out to existing employers, has been going well. Trent and I are learning kind of the system, the flow, the types of questions we need to ask in order to get good data back from those employers in order to make informed decisions on how we operate. I talked about a CRM system, and we've engaged Salesforce, so we've hired Salesforce and a company to help build out the template for us. We're about 2 weeks from go live, so I'm super excited to do that. I'm really excited to hopefully have my team get off my back about when that's going to be going live, so we're about 2 weeks out from that. Our partners at Meridian Tech have been fantastic. We talked about Justin Hazard in the incubator. He has joined our Economic Development Committee. He's working on a presentation or a pipeline proposal of all the companies that are in the incubator right now and kind of what their trajectory when they're going to graduate from the program. So that way we can get the guys behind us that might be wanting to develop a building for them or lease a building for them. They'll kind of understand what the metrics of what they might need and when that might come out. The industrial park was something we talked about last time. Kelly Harris over at Keystone Engineering is working with Paula Dennison. We're moving forward on getting the plans and everything laid out. A couple of the site visits have made us be a little bit more flexible on what that looks like, but we're hopefully pretty close to kind of putting a stamp on what that's going to look like. And then we talked about a Stillwater Showcase Day. That was when I talked about how I'm not a marketing major and I didn't know how to label that day. But Elaine, you weren't there, and we talked a little bit about a FAM tour, a familiarization tour. And so we've talked with our partners in Oklahoma City and Tulsa and seeing if we can do kind of a whole state swing in order to get site selectors to town from Chicago or Dallas. We kind of give them a little more than just one potential site. So maybe doing a 2 or a 3 day kind of run through. So that's something that we're working towards. It's just not going to be an immediate solution on the calendar. So that's the updates that, from the initiatives I gave you last time. There's one more to add that we're going to be working on a go forward is our website. And so we've actually engaged Juvo Web today. I gave them a check. We're going to get a little bit of a facelift. as well as update a lot of our content. If you go look at our economic development website today, some things are a little dated, so we're sorry for that. We're working on it. Trenton is working on it very hard. So hopefully in the next 3-4 weeks or so, we'll have all that updated. It'll have a nice, clean look, and we'll be proud of the presentation and the marketing that we're putting out to the site selector world. So with that, that is my update.
Counselors, questions?
Thank you, you've been busy.
A little bit.
Yeah.
You
No.
talk really fast.
Well, I'm trying to be respectful of your time. You know, I don't want to.
There are no complaints.
Yeah, if you want, I've got 20 minutes worth of material that I could gladly go into.
We really appreciate all of the work since you've been there, and I think you have an amazing team, and I was able to go and see our brilliant staff and your brilliant staff work together. I was so impressed that I came home and told everybody how impressed I was. I really did. We're going to get those contracts. If not those, we'll get other ones. It was very good.
Yeah,
Thank you.
we have some friends down in Oklahoma City that want us.
Yes.
They want to see us win one, so we're
Yes.
working on that.
Yes.
So thank you.
It was good.
I'll see you guys in
Thank
August
you.
for an annual
All
update.
right.
Thank you.
Okay, that takes us to item B, which is the project selection for the 2017 Community Development Block Grant, which is CC-17-68. Valerie.
Thank you. Well, I'm back, and we have money solidified, and it's 127, or 121, 127. And to be brief, to remind you, we have 3 projects that are possibilities, and we do have the match identified in the amount of 228,873 for the skate park, which was the least expensive of the 3. So I kind of agree with Brock.
See what happens when you come to city council, Brock?
Do you guys have any questions?
Counselors, questions?
I do not. No.
Okay. Is there a motion?
If you're going to select
Yeah.
projects, you'll need to have a motion.
All right.
Motion to accept staff recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to accept staff recommendation. Please vote. And with a vote of 5-0, CC-17-68 is approved. Item C, cost of,
Tell our young man that spoke that the skate park's approved.
so Brock, the skate park is approved. All right. Okay. All right. That takes us to item C. Cost of services study for development services department, CC-17-69. Counselors, discussion.
Wait, where are we?
Oh, we're on C, cost of,
Consider pedestrian.
Pedestrian.
Actually,
don't have that.
I can stand now, or I
Yeah.
can stand later.
I have D as considered pedestrian, sorry.
That's okay.
Okay, so let's do the cost of services. You're up there. It's item, I called it, so let's do that one, then we'll go to pedestrian improvements. Counselors, discussion, questions, or Paula, do you want to make presentation first?
I'll be happy to. I'll be happy to answer any questions. I do have very brief. Everything is distributed to you in your packet. I will make one item of clarification as I run across the council chambers. We did have a couple of calculation errors that we found today, and those are the amended rate schedules that are laid up on your desk, and there's a few of the copies here. The amended pieces are highlighted in yellow. However, that's not the main reason I'm up here. The main reason I'm up here is to go through the process of getting this proposal before the council this evening. One thing before I go through the entire process, there's an ordinance later on the agenda that it's an enabling ordinance that authorizes the city council to establish fees citywide. We have a number of places in city code where the council is authorized to establish fees. We have some places in the codes that we have adopted that authorizes the council to establish fees. So instead of picking and pulling from all of those, then this ordinance that you have on your agenda is just a blanket enabling ordinance for the council to establish fees, whatever fees you determine proper. So how we got here, we were asked by the council back last fall to conduct a cost of services study for the Development Services Department. In working with the Finance Department, and Chrissy Cluck is here this evening, and I can't tell you how much of a wonderful person she is to work with, and her accounting knowledge. This is why I'm not an accountant, I'm a planner. I like the crayons, and she likes the math. So we worked well together. It was a learning curve for both of us, which was an added benefit to going through this exercise. But what she found in utilizing a 3-year average to develop the rate schedule and see where the revenues and expenditures stand, what she found is that there's only approximately 23% cost recovery on the operation of the Development Services Department. And that means that the rest of it is funded through the general fund, primarily sales tax. When you actually look at hard numbers, it's pretty frightening. The expenditures to operate the department, a little over $1.2 million, and the revenues is just barely over $268,000, which is a whole of a little over $933,000. So once we found that, we looked at cost recovery methodology, and that's the 5 or 6 page pyramid methodology that we included in your packets also, just for y'all to see how we worked through asking questions, debating, thinking about what to recover, how much to recover. There are primarily the services that the Development Services Department performs are for the development community. However, there are some overall overreaching community services that we also perform. A few of those, just to mention, are state or federal mandated. Our MS4 permit, our community rating system, floodplain administration, those are more for a full community-wide benefit than just a segment of our community. So the methodology, through discussions and debates, we worked with the Land Development Ad Hoc Committee, on which 2 of the counselors sit, and it was determined to recommend not 100% full recovery, but 75%, for the sole reason that some of those services are more holistically community-based. Then we drilled down to the application of whatever fees to reach that 75%. Going from 23% recovery to 75% recovery overnight, that's going to hurt everybody, city included. Stepping it in was the more logical method to do so. So that's the approach that we took, and it's outlined in your schedules there. We have 3-step implementation program. First step would be effective July 1 of this year. Second step, July 1 of 2018. Then the third and final step to reach that 75% recovery is going to be July 1 of 2019 at the will of the council. Then each year after that, similarly to how other fee schedules are structured in the community, there would be an automatic annual escalator applied, either 3% or the South Region CPI, whichever is less. We have had that on the building fees for a number of years, and sometimes there was no increase. If the CPI was 0 or negative, there was no additional increase. CFO Reams fussed at me a little bit for some of the permit cost because they may have 88 cents or 23 cents, and that comes into play when you have 0.9% increase on those building permit fees. You start dealing with pennies. So that's why some of the numbers may seem a little off. What we have tried to present is what we believe, what staff believes the council was looking for. Where are we? Where can we be? Where should we be? And how can we get there, not overnight, but work in an implementation schedule to get to where it is believed that we should be? Again, this rate structure is not on the agenda for approval tonight. The ordinance is the only thing, and it's just a first reading that would authorize, as I said, that blanket enabling legislation for you as the council to be able to apply fees whenever and however you deem necessary. I'll be happy to take any questions on how this was developed. Christy is here in the audience, as well as our CFO, Melissa Reams, who was instrumental in this as well.
Okay, thank you. Counselors, questions for Paula?
I think just a couple of comments. I do appreciate the efforts of the developers and construction industry persons parsing out assigning their statements so that they were hitting all the points in an efficient way. And it's difficult to separate, Paula, as you were saying, the effect of something that's for the holistic community. I mean, the contribution of this industry to our community is a huge contribution, and it does affect the whole community. I'm very pleased with the way you followed through on the cost of services. And I appreciate the recommendation from the committee of our council to work toward a 75% recovery. And I also appreciated your cost recovery pyramid methodology in the packet. And to this point, the very first section is critical to this philosophical undertaking is the support and buy-in of elected officials and advisory boards, staff, and ultimately citizens. So I hope that in this period when we have just heard about this and recognizing the separation of the ordinance from what the fee schedule is, that there will be time from this point on to talk to the Building Relations Committee. Is there a plan to do that, or?
The committee actually meets monthly, so depending on when the council wants the resolution establishing fees to come back, the next Builders Relations Committee meeting is May 20-something, if I calendar in my head is not working properly, but the fourth Wednesday of May is when our next regular meeting would be.
So we could have the resolution come after that meeting?
We can always call a special meeting if we needed to, if this needed to be addressed.
I'm hoping you will call a special meeting.
We can do that.
Well, I'd like to comment because I serve on the committee, and as I sat on there and listened to the fact that we need to have a 75% recovery, that's something that we have to take into account as a council member. But I also agree with Vice Mayor Darlington in that, for those of you who stood up tonight and talked about it, we do need to change something. It can't stay the same. But my hope is if there can be a special meeting called or the next meeting where there can be discussion, we've got to do something differently. We can't keep we can't keep taking in the cost for what it's costing us to do this. So I believe in what the staff recommended, but I also want to have a way that we can work together to make this happen. And maybe there's some different ways to look at different fees and things that can happen, but it can't continue the way it is right now.
I agree, and I'm going to let Councilor Joyce go.
I just add, as someone who sat on the the subcommittee that kind of looked through this with staff, our goal as council is not necessarily to set every dollar figure on this fee schedule. We didn't, Elaine and I on the committee didn't go through every dollar figure on this fee schedule and say, well, we think that should be $30.34. Our goal as a council is to say, current 22 or 23% cost recovery for this department is not sustainable. It's not, and that goes to issues like, I think Mr. Sorrell, mentioned enforcement problems, with people not getting their permits. That's a problem. I mean, we don't want that to happen. Part of the way we fund better enforcement is through having a department here that's well funded, and that's not operating at 20%. That's not only covering 20% of its costs. So we want to see a healthy, funded department so it is able to provide the services at the level, that we expect as a community. I think part of the issue we talked about in subcommittee too is that, when you look at fees that are really almost negligible, I mean, when you talk about $800 in plan review fees from $1.5 million building, to me that gets close to the idea that when something, is perceived to be free, it's perceived to be valueless, right? That there's nothing of value that the city's adding to the process. If there's only $800 and it's, on this huge project, then what are they really doing? Well, this is important. It is important for our development committee, our development department to be able to make sure that buildings are built to codes and standards, and that we don't end up in situations where, 10 years down the road, we've got flooding in an area because the site plan wasn't fully reviewed. So, all of this is built around the idea that we want the development services department in Stillwater to function well and to provide great services to you all as a building community and to every one of us as citizens. And to do that, it's important that that department is well funded and that the fees are in proportion with the service that they provide. And so my view as a counselor, I think our view as a subcommittee when we looked at it was to say this definitely does need to increase. The actual numbers on the spreadsheet are of really not as much concern to me as the idea that we are getting that number stepped up over the course of time to where this department is being funded in a way that will make it better and more functional and to better serve our community. So the ordinance tonight, I think, allows us to do that. If the Building Relations Committee wants to have input before we have a resolution out there to set the actual numbers, I have no problem with that. And certainly, we talk about this being done over a number of years. These are all, resolutions that the council is going to look at on a regular basis to ensure that these numbers continue to stay at a level where we're recovering things. So this is going to be something that is a continual discussion between development services and the building community. So I think we're all in favor of that. Certainly from what you all have said, we want this to continue to be a discussion. But we as a council, from a policy perspective, need to be able to say, this funding needs to be increased. We need to be able to recover more of these costs, and we need to get it to a reasonable level, which 75% over the next 3 years, I think is reasonable given the services that development services provides.
So I'll round it out, I guess. When I was reading this, actually, over the weekend, I went through kind of a range of emotions. The first emotion was, oh my gosh, we're only recovering 23% of our investment into this as a department. That was kind of shocking. And then my next emotion was, oh my gosh, we're going to increase these fees by over 50% on the building community. So I kind of went back and forth full circle on this, going through these numbers. So I've got a couple of questions actually before I comment any further. So what is the usual ratio of recovery for costs in a department like this in a community our size? I mean, are they all 23%? Are they closer to 75%? What's the range there?
It ranges everywhere from fully supported by the public and whatever public dollars there are, all the way up to 100% recovery. Communities across the country have different ways to operate, and that's one of the things we found when we were researching the recovery methodology. There are a number of studies that communities have done on what, just absolutely setting how much should we be recovering for what specific services we provide? And the majority of what we found was not 100% recovery, but they did everything from the fleet maintenance all the way up to park and rec, to development, to, police departments, everything that you could find out there. And the community's desires had a strong influence on how much the community was willing to subsidize or carry whatever that service was. So there was nothing that we could absolutely pinpoint and say, this is it, that's what we need to mimic.
And do we have a good pulse on that right now? I mean, as far as what the community wants, do we have a good idea of what the citizens are asking for or want?
Well, I'll give you my initial off-the-cuff response is I do not believe that overall the general population of Stillwater is fully aware of what all their tax dollars or fees pay when it comes to the operation of city government. At the same time, I will go back a number of years. In 2001, that was the last update to the non-building fee schedule, 2001. And when the council or commission at the time chose to adopt a fee schedule for that, they put in the language that they would like to see a minimum 50% recovery. 3 years ago, when I did the third analysis, and me, not an accountant nor mathematician doing the analysis, we were hitting about 4% recovery 3 years ago, not 50, that had been the council's resolution in 2001. When the building fees were increased 2007, if my memory serves me correctly, they were increased approximately 12% in one jump at that time. And that was to hit approximate 50%. 3 years ago, it was the building fees were recovering about 51%, so it was in pretty good standing. Not the 75 that we have indicated here, but still a lot more than the 4 on the other side. And that's when the annual escalator, as I was mentioning, the 3% or the CPI, whichever is less, that was actually written into the resolution so that staff, development community, council, anyone in the future would not be going through that same do we or don't we? How do we? How can we not? All the questions that we're having here this evening. And that's one of the reasons that we have included that annual escalator. But to directly answer your question, no, I don't believe that we could have a feel for it because I don't believe it is a known.
Yeah.
Well, I would just jump in and add
Yeah.
to answer that question. I think that it's pretty clear that the committee or that the community would like for us to be able to fund road construction rather than being able to subsidize the development of a private piece of property. I think that to me is the question here. If we're talking about where's this money come from, if we're not recovering it in fees, then it's coming out of sales tax. And if it's coming out of sales tax, then it's not going to roads, it's not going to the other stuff we're supposed to be doing. I think it's pretty clear that the city, has an issue when it comes to income at this point.
Well, I would say that these are, like I said, when I read this, these are pretty, I won't use the word extreme, but this is a fair amount of increase in cost recovery. So I'm all for, I understand the resolution today is not to set these schedules or these fees, which I absolutely agree with. I think there's more discussion that needs to go into this with people that know well more about this than I do before we finalize any kind of fee schedule at all. Because like I said, as a business owner myself, increasing fees from a recovery of 23% to 75%, I would have pause with that. That would make me nervous. I agree absolutely that a model of recovering 23% of your costs is is not sustainable, and there does need to be a change, no question about that. How much of a change, and is there some compromise or middle ground there? I think probably so. I think more discussion is needed here. So I'll close with that.
Okay.
I would just like to reiterate what Will said. It's our job to do policy. And the policy to have a department that is working well, is well-funded, and can do the work that we have asked them, that citizens have asked them to do, with the best personnel that they have, with the best materials, is crucial. And again, I also have nothing to measure these numbers against, but I do think it's our responsibility to make this policy.
And I will just reiterate on that, just because you took the words out of my mouth, and I even had them written down. We are elected as policymakers, and we're responsible for the budget. Those are our two things that we are elected to do. And we are responsible to the taxpayers. And I hear what you're saying, Councilor Joy. Well, I'm hearing what everybody's saying. But 23% is not acceptable. It's not even, a business wouldn't do that. A business wouldn't lose that much.
Not for very long, anyway.
No. It's just not sustainable, and we've been doing it for way too long. Way too long. You said the fee schedule was last updated in 2001? And then
On the non-building.
on non-building, and then
Yes.
building fees were increased 12% in 2007?
7. I believe it was 7. Yes.
And I appreciate what everybody said about the sales tax. But we have to be careful how we spend our sales tax, because we have so little of it. And we have so many things that we have to spend it on that are not private development. And so I appreciate what everybody said, and I do hope that the building committee can meet with staff again, but I do think it all boils down to, we have to have something that's sustainable. And so I will close with that and ask staff for the recommendation, or are we just going to stop it here tonight?
Tonight was just a discussion with the ordinance for first reading, and then we, staff would ask the council if we may take a liberty to direct us of when you would like the resolution establishing whatever fees to come back to you. So we can work on preparing that also.
How fast can there be a special meeting with the Building Relations Committee?
This
That is the first step.
week or next, they're even, you can tell I have my back to them, so I'm very confident in our relationship. They are very, very responsive in, if I need to call a meeting or if they need to call a meeting, then we usually just step up. So I'm figuring
Something tells me
sometime
there'll
before
be a
the
good
end of next week, then we will have a meeting.
Yeah.
And does it take more than one meeting? I mean, I want to be realistic. I don't want it there to be felt like we are dictating. I think like we said up here, we are about policy, and that's what we're up here, sitting up here to do, but I don't ever want anyone to feel like we're trying to do or make decisions based without getting the input of the people who do them on a daily basis. And so my apologies if that came out, but I also want to be realistic in that we have to do something different. And so does one meeting cover it, or is it 2 meetings? Is it fair to do it middle of May so that it gives you guys a couple of months to talk it over? I don't know how these things go. It seems like a pretty significant decision to make as fees go, and so.
Could we request 2 meetings just to be safe?
We can, yes. That would give us, we usually schedule an hour and a half per, so that should give us ample time to
Or if a
work
second meeting
through.
is needed.
Or if a second meeting is needed, yes. Yep, we can do that.
Okay. I would like Mr. McNichol to ask the question.
It would also be handy for staff to have a little bit of guidance on where you want us to go.
You're talking about the recovery?
On the recovery,
amount.
yes.
Okay. I think we should be recovering what, staff says we should be.
Well, one of the things that we do a lot is compare ourselves to other cities, and if that's acceptable to the council, then, and we have done that in this case, but if that's acceptable to the council, that's what we'll do.
Are we still talking about 75% over 3 years?
Pardon?
Is that what you're asking, if we're still thinking about 75% over a 3-year?
Well, just some direction on where we go. What's our target in these discussions?
I thought, staff presented those numbers based on the research they had done and the process they followed. Elaine and I talked about those numbers in the subcommittee. We took that information from staff. It made sense to us, given the information that was presented and the information that we have here. I don't think there's any reason to change at this point what staff's research has shown in terms of what a reasonable cost recovery percentage is over the next,
I'm doing it over
course of the
3
next
years,
3 years.
so it's not
Yes.
an immediate.
So I would be happy to see a resolution June 1st or June, second meeting of June, whichever one, to get us to 25% for this year. However, those numbers actually shake out, as long as it gets to 25%, that's fine. That seems to make sense to me.
I agree.
Yes. Does that answer your question?
Is that so the resolution that you guys would bring June, whatever, would have numbers in this spreadsheet that total up to us getting a 25% recovery as of July 1st.
Correct.
Fees that just, yes. And I guess you can push them forward to see what's that going to look like next year and the year after, so it's at 75% 3 years. But that's, I assume, going to be a separate resolution next
Each
summer.
year.
Right.
When we get there and say, okay, we are going to go ahead and bump these up to 50% at that point. None of this is science, right? None of this is, we know exactly what this is going to mean and how it's going to work. Some of these are totally new fees. There is going to be discussion no matter what. And so, we're going to get to next summer and go, well, yeah, it needs to be at 50%, but we need to adjust some of these based on what we're seeing in the market and what we're seeing, in the building community, that sort of thing. That's all great. I want all those conversations to happen. Again, I just want us to be setting benchmarks as a council where we're saying, we want to get it to 25% recovery, set it at, where it's going to recover 24% this year. Next year, we plan to bump that up to 50, and the year after, we plan to bump it up to 75.
And we're not going to kick the can down the road. We're just not going to do it.
Happen.
Not going to do it. Okay.
Okay.
Does that make more
Thank you.
questions answered and know where you're going?
Yes, ma'am.
And the BRC, BRC?
Yes.
So it's not a council committee,
No.
right? But we appreciate the committee, and we appreciate the input of everybody on that, and we want to work together. So while we're telling staff what to do, I hope I'm looking at everybody who's out there, who came forward, or who is listening. We need your cooperation as well. And we need, I think, after everybody spoke today, you understand we cannot sustain this. So help us. You come up with solutions too. We need your help. Okay. All right, we're moving on. We will now go to item C, because I have it backward. Consider pedestrian improvements on Duck Street and Matthews Avenue, CC-17-67.
And Charlotte Levern has that report tonight.
Good evening. It is cold, isn't it?
We're all.
My feet are freezing.
I should just put it on.
I think it feels lovely in here. I think it's all perspective.
Yep.
I'm old, I'm supposed to be hot.
Well, I am here to present on Duck Street and Matthews Avenue pedestrian improvements, and you have a report in front of you with some alternatives, so I'll briefly go through that and ask for your decision. We are looking at two sources of funding for pedestrian improvements should you decide to move forward with that. One is the operations budget. We have, operations department does have money available for materials, and they have their existing workforce. Then also, transportation sales tax is mentioned in the report, total of $87,000. The alternatives that are presented are, one, to remove the crosswalks at the intersection of Duck and Matthews, and I'll read this for the audience. One, close and remove the existing crosswalks at Duck and Matthews and redirect pedestrians to the nearby, or to the nearest signalized intersection. This alternative requires repair and replacement of the existing sidewalks on the east side of Duck from Miller Avenue to Hall of Fame, construction of a new sidewalk on the west side of Duck from Matthews to Hall of Fame, and replacement of curb ramps at the Hall of Fame, Matthews, and Miller intersections with Duck. Alternative 2 is to improve the crosswalks at Duck and Matthews with a pedestrian actuated warning system. And this system would include warning signs at and in advance of the crosswalks, equipped with warning strobe lights, and warning strobe lights also in the pavement at the crosswalks. And the estimated installation cost of the warning system is $87,000, and that would be from the transportation sales tax. The third alternative that is presented tonight is to do nothing, which is always an alternative for any project. I would like to recommend, the staff recommendation is alternative 1, and I open the floor for discussion, questions. I'm sure there's many.
Counselors?
Well, I'm really glad you did not recommend do nothing. It's a horrible corner.
Mayor, if I may, this is a problematic crosswalk. There are 5 lanes at Matthews and Duck. I've spoken to both Oklahoma State University Vice President Weaver about this situation and the SGA. They understand the problem. One of the concerns about adding the pedestrian signals at that point is that there are so many upcoming movements a block away to another signal at a 5-lane intersection that people are planning their next move, and they aren't paying as close of attention to pedestrian traffic there as they should. It is, in our estimation, in its current condition, very dangerous and needs some kind of action, and hence the reason for this report. Doesn't meet MUDCAP manual on uniform traffic control design, does not meet standards, and the speeds there are just too high to leave it as is.
And if we, with alternative 1, we can perform this in-house and construction takes about 6 weeks, we have a pretty good date that we can start this in late May or early June. Because
Yes.
the last thing we want to happen is to let that go on during football season.
Oh, yes.
Or, when the traffic really picks up, so.
Yeah, that is the plan, get it done before the students come back in.
Before they come back in.
Yeah,
Are the closest signals there's one at Hall of Fame and there's one at Miller, right?
correct,
Both block to the north and a block to the south?
correct. The problem is the ADA access, or even, just general pedestrian access to those intersections is not ideal, and we need some type of pedestrian improvements, whether it's across the road at that location, or just getting from Matthews to the other intersections.
And that alternative 1 is to do the work to try to make it easier for them to get to those other intersections.
Correct,
They can-
where they would have a safer
Yes,
crossing.
that makes a lot of sense.
Yes.
There's no way to go from Matthews to Miller. That on the west side, there's.
Not on the
no
west
way
side.
You could do that.
We would get a pedestrian easement from Oklahoma State University to construct a sidewalk along that section. But not, Matthews to Miller, no, but Matthews to Hall of Fame,
Right,
yes.
I mean, that side.
Matthews to Miller,
is just.
yeah,
right.
there's a retention wall, and it's not going to be easy, cost-effective to build that.
Elevation.
We appreciate the easements. From OSU.
Yes.
And we did consider traffic light at this intersection. The problem becomes that that just so congests everything, and not just pedestrian traffic, but every kind of mode of traffic that would be there, that we kind of discounted that.
Well, and I think that this alternative takes into account the safety more than anything else, and I think that's what we all have to look at, is this will provide the safety that we need.
Motion to accept staff recommendation?
Second?
We have a motion and a second to accept staff recommendation CC-17-67. Please vote. And with a vote of 5-0, CC-17-67 is approved on staff recommendation. That takes us to resolutions. Item A, resolution number, not for sure I have that, CC-2017-9, a resolution regarding commitment or leverage for the Oklahoma Department of Commerce Community Development Block Grant, CDBG 2017 State Small Cities Program, CC-17-68. Mr. Dorman.
This is the resolution that will authorize the acceptance of the CDBG grant and the agreement to match that money for purposes of constructing the skate park for the young man that was here earlier today.
He's not the only one that gets to use it, right?
No.
Maybe first.
Okay, do we have a motion?
Yes, motion to adopt.
Accept, Mr. Dorman?
Yes, accept
Yes.
this.
All right.
Accept.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to accept resolution number 2017-9. Please vote. And with a vote of 5-0, 2017-9 is approved. Bless you. And that takes us to ordinances. Mr. Dorman on first reading.
Ordinance number 3364, an ordinance closing a portion of a general utility easement located at property addressed at 1201 West 6th Avenue.
Motion to advance the second reading?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to advance ordinance number 3364. Please vote. And with a vote of 5-0. Sorry, I lost my train of thought because I broke the microphone again, sorry. Ordinance number 3364 is advanced to second reading with a vote of 5-0. That brings us to ordinance number 3365. Mr. Dorman on first reading.
An ordinance closing the north 120 feet of right-of-way at Duncan Street at property addressed at 821 North Duck Street, 823 North Duncan Street, and 821 North Husband Street.
Discussion.
Motion to move to second reading.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to advance ordinance number 3365 to second reading. Please vote. And ordinance number 3365 is advanced to second reading with a vote of 5-0. That brings us to ordinance number 3363. Mr. Dorman? No.
3366.
Sorry. 3366. Mr. Dorman?
An ordinance amending the Stillwater City Code by amending Chapter 10, Buildings and Building Regulations, Article 1 in general, to create Section 10.2, Fees and Charges for Services, Authorization, and Cost Recovery. This is the ordinance that Ms. Dennison's already described to you, I would just simply add that it is basically a housekeeping ordinance, that we do have several scattered sections authorizing various fees and so forth. This will basically bring all of those together and give you one place to authorize all of the fees and items that will be forthcoming in the resolution. The other thing I might mention is that given your schedule for the adoption of the resolution, I would probably add an emergency clause to this for second reading, thinking that we might want to go ahead and get this into effect as opposed to waiting the full 30 days after publication for this to become effective.
Okay, and you can handle that for us?
Yes, ma'am, I will just add an emergency clause on second reading.
Okay. Is there a motion?
Motion to advance to second reading.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to advance to second reading. Please vote. And with a vote of 5-0, that is advanced to second reading. That brings us to second reading, ordinance number 3363.
An ordinance amending a planned unit development and rezoning tracts of land located at 1 Arbor Circle and 55 to 99 Arbor Circle from O Office to RT Residential 1 and 2 Family District.
Discussion.
Motion to adopt.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to adopt. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, that is 3363 is adopted with a vote of 5-0. That brings us to reports from officers and boards. Miscellaneous items from the city attorney.
I have a number of requests for executive sessions tonight. Request an executive session pursuant to 25 OS subsection 307B2 to discuss labor negotiations with International Association of Firefighters Local 2095. Secondly, request an executive session pursuant to 25 OS subsection 307B4 for the purpose of confidential communication regarding potential litigation against the Iowa Pacific Railroad. It is my opinion that public disclosure of this matter will seriously impair the ability of the City Council to prosecute this pending litigation or proceeding in the public interest. Third, I would request an executive session for the purpose of confidential communication regarding the sale, purchase, or appraisal of real property pursuant to 25 OS subsection 307B3. And finally, request an executive session pursuant to 25 OS subsection 307C10 for the purpose of conferring on matters pertaining to economic development, including the transfer of property, financing, or the creation of a proposal to entice a business to locate within the city of Stillwater, because public disclosure of the matter to be discussed would interfere with the development of products and services and would violate the confidentiality of the business.
All right.
Is that it?
That's it. We got extra cake. We might be here a while.
Okay, that takes us to Mr. McNichol.
Yes, ma'am. Mine's a bit shorter. But we're coming off a great month for Stillwater Regional Airport. The Oklahoma Airport Operators Association Annual Awards Banquet was held last week, and I believe it's here in Stillwater.
It was.
And you spoke to them.
I did, and it was at the Alumni Center. It was
That's
great.
right. And SWO received the Airport of the Year Award. To add to that excitement, our very own Gary Johnson received the award for Airport Manager of the Year.
He's busy. He was here, but he's busy.
Okay.
Yeah.
And earlier this month, TSA Team Oklahoma presented our airport with its partnership award in recognition of our airport staff outstanding relationship with TSA in the past quarter. And really exciting news, since service began in August, we've continued to exceed all expectations. And in a few months, we'll be celebrating first anniversary of commercial air service. And on and about that same date, we will return to the current schedule. The early morning flight, the midday turn, and the evening flight. So we're excited about that and appreciate American Airlines and listening to us, and Representative Langford, Senator Inhofe, Secretary Ridley, President Hargis, and all of the folks' hard work that, pardon?
Frank Lucas?
Yes.
Yes. Frank Lucas.
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you. All that hard work to get that schedule back to what we currently enjoy. Thank you.
Yes. Yes, we were all excited to see that news release. Very excited. Okay, city councilors, discussion or talk news?
Well, as I sit here with a jacket on, I'm going to talk to you guys now about registration is now open for summer swim and tennis lesson programs. To enroll in a program, fill out the activity registration form at stillwater.org or at the City of Stillwater Armory Recreation Center. Season passes and punch cards are for the pool are also available for purchase throughout the summer.
Thank you. Vice Mayor?
And to assist students moving out of town this summer, there is a free service. You can drop off your electronics, large items, bulk items at the Convenience Collection Center on South Perkins Road from May 1st to June 30th. Again, the service is free. And details and a full list of accepted items are on the website, stillwater.org.
And that's not just for students. That would be citizens can
I don't know.
do
You
that
have
as
to
well,
show-
or
Students?
just students? So you have to show a student ID?
Okay.
Okay. Don't throw away your student IDs after you graduate. Okay, Counselor Joyce.
I have less exciting news, but unfortunately, for the 5th month in a row, Stillwater's sales tax collections were below what they were last year. Our year-to-date sales tax collections are down 2.31% from year-to-date fiscal year 2016 collections, and our sales tax collections are under budget by $474,184. The Finance Department is looking at these trends, making adjustments to the current fiscal year and planning accordingly for upcoming fiscal years. You can check monthly updates on our sales tax collections in the news section of the city's website. Shop local.
Counselor Woodlake.
And finally, I want to say congratulations to our electric utility department. They recently received the Clarence Fulkerson Electric System Achievement Award, presented by Municipal Electric Systems of Oklahoma. This annual award recognizes a municipal utility that has distinguished itself during the year for exemplary system enhancement, improvement, reliability, and other innovative efforts to improve municipal power in Oklahoma. We are very proud to be an electric team, or proud of our electric team, excuse me, and we are grateful to be a public power city. So congratulations to them for a job well done.
Yes, and yes, we are. Okay, that takes us to appointments, and we have appointments for the library board. We have 2 open positions because 2 terms expire this month. Judy Nelson does not want to be reappointed. Gary Stanton wishes to be reappointed, and we have 1 application from Andrea, I hope I say this correctly, Yo. I nominate Andrea to the library board. Do we have a motion?
I would second your motion.
Okay. That's right, I did make. Okay, we have a motion and a second to put Andrea on the board and to reappoint Gary Stanton. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, Gary will remain, or is reappointed, and Andrea is now on the board. And at this time, I'm going to recess the Stillwater City Council meeting and go to the Stillwater Utilities Authority meeting, and then we'll come back. I am going to call the Stillwater Utilities Authority meeting to order. And trustees, does anyone wish to remove an item, or is there a motion to approve the consent docket?
Motion to approve the consent docket.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent docket. Please vote.
Oops.
And with a vote of 5-0, the consent docket is approved.
It got so warm that I started to relax. It's wonderful.
That moves us to general orders, and we need the appointment of representatives to the Kaw Reservoir Authority Board. And Mr. McNichol, I'm going to let you talk about this one a little bit.
It is a board that regulates what we do with the water from the Kaw Reservoir, and I am told it meets once a year.
Once a year.
And that it is, and it deals, again, with the water that's available at our pipeline
all of-
intake, I think.
Right, there's a trust that consists of the city of Stillwater and the city of Ponca City, and it's responsible for managing the assets in the Call Reservoir Dam that are leased to the Call Reservoir Authority, basically a conduit and a large valve and the connections that start the water on its way to Stillwater. And we have to meet on a yearly basis, and there are 2 vacancies from Stillwater with the departure of Dan Galloway, and former Councilor Chuck Thomas will be leaving Stillwater soon and has elected not to remain in that position.
Well, then may I recommend Norman McNichol and Dan Blankenship?
I think those would be worthy successors.
Does anyone, okay, so I make the motion to appoint Norman McNichol and Dan Blankenship to this board.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to appoint Dan Blankenship and Norman McNichol. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, they are both appointed to the Call Reservoir Authority Board. And are there any questions or reports from officers and boards? Sorry. General Counsel,
Nothing to report, ma'am.
General Manager,
Nothing, ma'am.
Trustees.
No, ma'am.
Nothing to report.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn the Stillwater Utilities Authority meeting. Please vote. And that is adjourned with a vote of 5-0. I will now reconvene the Stillwater City Council meeting. Do we have a motion and a second to go into executive session?
Motion to go to executive session.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to move to executive session. Please vote.